welcome back. Today I want to talk about a topic that I get asked a lot of questions about all the time. I know you've heard me talk about this before in some of my other videos, but basically, I commonly see in Facebook groups or just other people saying things like, all of these devices are made in China, none of them are made here in America, they're all the same, buy it on AliExpress, and that's fine, that's fine. You are free to spend your money how you want to spend your money. But what I want to do is just clear the air, talk a little bit about the real facts, the differences, and I'm going to do that today with Rev 6.1s, okay? So what I have here is a Rev 6.1 from AliExpress. This is a Chinese-made, manufactured, sold. Has some interesting print on it. We're going to talk about that. And then on this hand, I've got a US manufactured Rev 6.1 from the original manufacturer that created and produced the Rev 6.1. So I want to talk about some of the differences, some of the key things, why I think it matters, kind of what I see. We repair, I would say thousands of small devices. Everything you see on my shelf back here is either backlog for repair or evaluation's been done and sent to a customer. We do a lot of them. I would venture to say we repair the most small Bitcoin miners, home miners, more than anybody else in the United States. And we stay pretty busy doing it. So fixing a lot of these devices, I see a lot of different things and some things that raise red flags to me, some things that are concerning. And I wanted to take some time and share it with you guys, give you my feedback on it. Again, you're free to spend your money however you want, but I think you should be armed with some of the facts and understanding of really where your hard-earned money is going. So let's talk about a little bit of back history for the people that may or may not know. The BitX project is an open source project. It's open source in both hardware and software. A group of guys came together, built a program called ESP Miner. It evolved into the BitX, which is the hardware device that runs ESP Miner. Here's a version here. This is a Gamma, currently the latest version. This is a 601, I believe, but the latest chip version, 1370, BM1370. And the whole focus of it was to decentralize the Bitcoin mining world. Take control of it in your own hands, not have to spend, thousands of dollars on a 240 volt miner that you can't run in your house. You got large corporations own a bunch of these and they're all hitting the Bitcoin blocks, and it's disheartening. The whole intention of Bitcoin and the decentralized cryptocurrency was really not that, and that's kind of what it has become in these large companies and large-scale mining farms. So the BitX project was created, and I would say that occurred just a couple of years ago. Some manufacturers domestically here in the United States picked that up. The license agreement is, that is an open source project. So if you make any changes to it, modifications to it, you are required to post a new repo or with new Gerbers, to share it with the world. So the intention was, we've created this, not us, but the creators of BitX project, ESP Miner, they created it. They released it to the world and said, you're free to use it, you're free to build it and sell it. Anything you change, you have to publish. You have to publish your changes, things to that nature. And for the first probably year and a half, 2 years, pace started to really ramp up and it was going really smooth. And a majority of what you saw in the market at that point in time was American built, either through Solo Satoshi, who uses a builder here in the United States to build his miners, or us like Ixtech. We started building when the Supra was the current model, and we have since built plus pluses. We created and built the Nerd QX, another open source project. We still build to this day right here in the United States. And then you started seeing this onslaught of these Chinese manufacturers take hold of it. We're going to talk about some of the things that they do or that I see on a pretty regular basis that may hinder repair stuff, but it really blew up. It became really popular, and like China typically does, when products become very popular, they copy it, build it, and they ship it out to the United States. And some are very reputable companies, I would say. I'm not going to name any, but I would say some are very reputable, and unfortunately most are not. A lot of fly-by-night places, they don't care. They just fire and forget. They build, they ship, and you have no support. So that's really what has happened over the last, really bad in the last probably 12 to 14 months. Is really, really ramped up as the whole home Bitcoin miner movement became more and more popular. They latched on, they grabbed a hold of it. They made changes, did different things. They locked it down. Some companies completely stole the IP, closed sourced it, the firmware, and they're selling that directly, because they just don't care. It doesn't matter to them. There's really no recourse, and they know that, and that's the unfortunate thing. Again, not all Chinese manufacturing is bad. I'm going to say that, be very clear. Lots of things are made in China that we all live with in our everyday lives that are quality products. But then there's a lot that are not, and that's the unfortunate reality of it. So what I'm going to do today is kind of cover with you on this these two Rev 6.1s in front of me. I want to cover some of the key differences, some of the things that I see, and talk about some of the experiences that my customers have had, just to share the information, and potentially some counterfeit products that are on these. Everything. It is blatantly obvious that it is much cheaper to manufacture items in China than it is in the United States, and that's the reason why majority of the electronics manufacturing is in China. But most companies control that level of quality when they design a product like Apple. Apple has certain standards, certain products, certain components that they want used, and China simply says, okay. The Chinese manufacturers like Foxconn say, okay, no problem. We've got your list. We know the products you want. They do the assembly process, and they ship them all over the world. Unfortunately, that's not always the case with everything. So, and in some cases, when they're stealing product designs and then just recreating them because it's a hot item and they can make a quick buck, and they do it at really cheap prices to undercut their competitors because they can. They cut corners too to achieve those low costs on their side. Again, we're going to talk about that here in a second. But I wanted to really give you the grim reality of this is what you're getting for your money. As long as you understand that, know that, buyer beware. This is the reality of it. So I don't want to ramble on too much. We can get right to it. So I'm going to share my microscope here. So this here is our Solo Satoshi Rev 6.1. Okay, manufactured right here in the United States. Says made in the USA. However, I've seen lots of China manufacturers continue to put that emblem on their stuff, unfortunately. KiCad is the software that was used to design the layouts of the boards. You see open hardware. I can't exactly quote the identical license, the type of license for open source. But essentially what it says is, think about it like a pay it forward. You're free to use it, you're free to build it, but if you make any changes, you must publish it. That's the requirements. And like I said, all of the US manufacturers that I'm aware of follow suit, fall in line, do what they've got to do, and we make a change, we make an update, we release that stuff. We create a new product that's based on ESP miner, we release it. So let's talk about some of the components. So this is a Solo Satoshi Rev 6.1. We see the big differences here between the Rev 6 versions and the Rev 5 versions. Obviously, a lot of the components have been taken to a smaller size. We made a big change on this side. We no longer have a fuse. We have gone to a high efficiency 12 volt to 5 volt converter to reduce components and improve efficiency. We see a difference in the chip here, and I can't off the top of my head recite what exactly this chip is that was here before and what this chip is here, but I believe it's the on the communication side to the ASICs. I just can't spit out the exact words for you right now. Still got our voltage regulators here, 3 primary coils, 3 CSDs, all the supporting snubbers and capacitors. Obviously 4 ASIC chips. Backside, a lot cleaner than the 5.1, less components, cleaner looking, I should say. Different theory and operation. Snubbers, XT30 connector, big introduction to that, getting away from the barrel connectors, okay? First thing I always notice right away is the branding of the coils. So the coils that are called out in the original bill of material are these coils. These are the correct coils for it. You see in size-wise, they're fairly large. They do a really good job of controlling the output ripple and smoothing out the output power that goes to your ASICs. So let's take a look at our Chinese version. So our Chinese version, we can see a dramatic difference in the size of the coil. Now these are R22s, these are R220s. I can run the numbers on the ones that are on this and tell you who manufactured them, where to get them. You know, again, probably manufactured overseas, and you know, a lot of the components that we find on these devices are either, you know, Malaysia, Taiwan, China, a lot of different places, but majority are not the United States. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You know, the United States has done a really good job of cutting the legs out from under manufacturing via the EPA and other regulation. And I'm not saying that we don't need to be regulated and have clean water and clean air. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that when we got really aggressive with that, we cared about the planet. Nobody else did. And it shifted all that manufacturing, all those companies, drove them all overseas because they just couldn't compete if they didn't do it. And it's unfortunate, but that's the reality of it. So again, I mentioned earlier that, you know, they're all built in China, or they're all, you know, made from Chinese components. I would say that's a pretty blanket statement. I would say they're all made from similar components built from around the world. I wouldn't say they're all Chinese components. You know, I would say, I probably couldn't tell you the BOM percentage, but I would say it's probably 50% or less of these components are actually manufactured in mainland China. They're probably coming out of other parts of the region. It just really depends on which part you buy. Anyways, moving on. So we see the difference in our coils. We see a difference in the quality of the header that we're using. You know, some people will say, well, these are black versus white. Yeah, it's a different thermoplastic. It is a little bit more expensive than the cheaper white versions. The connectors for the XT30, we have a branded, let me just turn this light down. We have a branded XT30 connector here. And I honestly, in all the repair work that I've ever done on all of these devices, I've never had to change one on one of these original Rev 6s. On the Chinese, we have one that has everything but the branding. So this was a knockoff of an original branding, and we don't have any, we have no idea who manufactured this particular part. I have changed several of these, and typically it's because of deformation of this plastic, and the connector doesn't want to fit. It either doesn't want to fit, it's really tight, or it gets really, really loose and the connector wants to fall out. So I've had to change quite a few of those. The D1 diode, which is probably the second most common failure I see on these devices. Let me see if I can share this light up a little bit. It's going to be difficult to see. But we typically identify these components by the writing that's on them, on who manufactures them, and to derive what the quality is. And we see we have a pretty big difference here. Okay? Now, I couldn't tell you right off the bat how good or bad or what are the quality difference, but they're definitely different. Again, this device here, built to the original bill of materials based on the designer of the board. This device has no bill of materials. So unfortunately, you send this into me for repair, and we've got a supporting capacitor or something that is bad. I have absolutely no way to know what the value is on those. Okay, I could probably remove one of these sister components that are on the same rail and identify it, but in cases where I can't do that, like some of these other items, I don't know. I'm gonna have to make some assumptions, but I can find every single part I can find the full bill of materials for this Rev 6.1 from that Solo Satoshi's selling. I can find that anywhere, or all day long, I should say. I actually have it downloaded to my computer. You know, I've had many cases where I've had to go back to a customer and say, hey, I've got this pretty exotic deviation here. I have no idea what this part is. Let me see, I've probably got another really good example of that. Here's another great example of a twist to the Rev 5.1 where they've decided to add an XT30 connector, kept the fuse on the board. Not on any BOM are these capacitors called out. They decided to make a change to go from what was on the original designs over to these. Okay, great. What are they? Got to try and dig them up and find out what they are. This is the kind of stuff that we see, and there's no information published on this. They took the design, they closed sourced it, and they decided they weren't going to share it because, in the words of some of the Chinese manufacturers that we've talked to, they don't want other Chinese manufacturers copying them, which I find pretty hilarious, to be honest with you. And again, we don't want to stagger innovation. We don't want people to not be successful. But at the same time, if you're going to take an open source project and you're going to be a part of that community, then be a part of that community and give back, share the information back. If you think you can make it better, or you have found a way to make it better, great. Share it with the community. That's what we're all here for. Instead, they close source it, hide it, and then they have zero support. You end up having to, battle with AliExpress or hope and pray that you can get your stuff, your money back or some kind of product support. Good luck. So going back to the differences, the other key differences here, and one of them that I thought was really interesting, I'm seeing a lot more of, and this one really, really surprised me. The number one failure point on all of these style of devices, okay, right, wrong, or indifferent, is the CSDs, okay? These 3 voltage regulators that we see here. Now, next to the ASICs, these take a bulk of the work. All the current that flows to the ASICs flows through these 3. That's why on an Octax, you'll see different 4-phase versions, 6-phase versions. They're dividing up that load. So all the current that flows to the ASICs is divided between these 3 CSDs, okay, that are controlled by the controller chip. And I saw somebody make a comment on Facebook not so long ago that said, waste of cooling and the controller itself is more heat, blah, blah, blah. That's incorrect. That is an inaccurate statement. The controller controls the signals for the CSDs. Is it a chip? Does it get a little warm? Sure. It doesn't get anywhere near as warm as the CSDs. These actually carry all the current. These 3 devices carry all the current all the way down to the ASICs. That's why when you have a shorted CSD, you plug your miner in, and especially if it's got a fuse, it instantly blows the fuse, and that's because you've got a path directly to the ASICs and back to ground when these CSDs are shorted. The only thing standing in the way is snubbers and coils, and they're not going to do anything. They're going to allow that power to go right through because they don't know any better. They just clean it up. That's all they're doing. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting lately that I'm seeing, and actually this one here is the Solo Satoshi Rev 6.1, the original. Okay, this is a legitimate from TI replacement CSD. We buy these regularly. I change hundreds of these a month. I couldn't even tell you how many I've thrown away. So we buy these very regularly from Texas Instruments Direct or from DigiKey. Again, the original called out material for the bill of material. And as you can see on these boards, those are identical. Okay. Now the date codings, the second group of numbers after TI is different, and the third group of numbers. Okay, the date coding, manufacturing lot information. But you see the font size, everything. These are genuine Texas Instruments CSDs. Look at the difference in the text size on these. And I'm starting to see this more and more. And in my opinion, I believe we're seeing counterfeit CSDs here. I've never seen font this small on the Texas Instrument CSD, and nobody that we have ever found makes an alternate part to these. These are specifically Texas Instruments design chips. And so I thought, man, this is interesting. This is what your money's getting you. Counterfeit CSD chips. That's interesting. And as you can see on this one, it's smoked. This one's in for repair. So I was like, wow, you know, the second most expensive component on these boards, and they're selling you counterfeit ones. Interesting. Looking at this board, we see, let's look at the graphics for a moment. We see the NerdX project Rev 6, OSM, which is open source miners. Assembled in the USA, open hardware, and KeyCAD. Now let's take care of our, look at our Chinese version. They kept the KeyCAD logo, they kept the open hardware logo. However, not open hardware. Can't get any of the information on this board on any changes they may or may not have made. They copied the OSM and the NerdQX++ Rev 6.1 logos. Great. But look here. We've added CE, which is certification required for certain countries for shipping. These aren't CE certified. I only know of one company that has legitimately done certification on any of these boards for CE, and they had to add lots of filter blocks, filters basically, additional snubbers across the board in order to pass CE. We see that on the new version of the NerdX Gamma. We see that on some of these other components, but only one company that I'm aware of has actually taken that effort, and I believe they're manufactured in Germany. There's nothing about this board that's CE. That's a blatant lie. They put FCC on here because the LilyGo display is FCC compliant. Okay. UK and CA, which off the top of my head I couldn't tell you what these ones are, but I find it kind of funny that they plaster these logos on here so that they can pass them through customs, so that they can try to avoid getting in trouble or during shipping, when they're shipping in certain countries or when they're doing certain things. I just, again, blatant lie about this design being CE certified. And if they are, show me, because nobody will man up and show us the certificates for them. Okay. I mean, in some countries, to put CE on this electronic device and ship it into that country is against the law. But these manufacturers don't care. I find that extremely interesting. And I get these things in all the time. And I'm seeing all kinds of deviations. I showed you one a second ago. And that's where your money's going to. When you buy these items off AliExpress, I get constantly get customers that tell me about their nightmares dealing with the repairs or warranty or lack of service. We get constant communication from Chinese companies asking us to be their repair center. Will you be our repair center? And we've turned every single one of them down. I'm not here to support this kind of behavior. We're not doing that. That's not what we're in this for. We're in this for the people. We're not in this for people to come in and copy designs, closed source firmware, and do things that they want because they want to jump on the bandwagon and give no contribution back to the entire intent of the project. So, a couple of the key things I want to point out, because I love hearing the phrase. They're all built in the same factory. They're all the same. Okay. Well, let's find out how much they're the same. I've shown you some of the really obvious things. Now let's check board thickness. So this AliExpress Rev 6.1 board thickness on my micrometer is measuring at 1.57 millimeters thick. I go to Solo Satoshi's, US-built, and I am reading here, I'll even show it to you, 2.01 millimeters. .60 is what my micrometer is reading. Maybe let's zero that out. Okay, let's re-zero that. We'll measure them again, just to be fair. 1.71. .16. Some people will say, well, why does that matter? Well, let me tell you why that matters. We did a lot when we were designing the QX, the NerdQX, and we were designing it for the performance-minded customer. And when we built our NerdX, our original BitX Gamma from us 601s, we looked a lot at board density, at the number of layers, the thickness of the layers, and how that had an overall impact on the device. Now, will the AliExpress one work? Sure. I mean, obviously, people are mining with them. But what we found is they're more difficult to control heat. We see more voltage loss, and we see higher current because the traces are thinner, smaller, less copper. Lots of these manufacturers can make these really cheap boards and get them really cheap and cut costs, but cutting that cost impacts the quality for the customer. When I do all my testing on these devices, I find that the Chinese Rev 6.1s will typically run 10 to 15 degrees C warmer than Solo Satoshi's Rev 6.1. And that's, again, they put the time and effort in to determine the proper number of layers, thickness of layers, copper. That's important. They didn't just throw it at the wall and fire them off on AliExpress and sell them to the first person that would spend the money. They thought about their customer. Now let's weigh them. Both of these units have no additional heat sinks. Okay, there's nothing else on these. Let's see how they weigh in. The AliExpress units, 90 grams. Solo Satoshi, 98 grams. A direct result of better quality components and thicker boards, more copper. Guys, I get them all the time. I see them all the time. I get lots of repairs in, and I just want to educate the customer and answer a lot of the questions I get all the time. Does it matter? Who cares? What's the difference? Solo Satoshi sold a ton of these domestically here in the United States. And I can't tell you how many get sold on AliExpress, probably about the same amount. And I probably get 8-to-1, 10-to-1 ratio of AliExpress Rev 6.1s versus Solo Satoshi. And that's a good guy. Solo Satoshi is a good company, and the builder for these boards is a good company. They do good work. It's clear. We've worked on this stuff for quite a while. We're all in the same tight community. They do a good job. The whole intention of this was really just to share the information, help educate you to know what you're buying and what to expect. I'm not trying to tell you that everything built in China is bad. I've said that numerous times now. But certainly the stuff that we're seeing coming into the market lacks support, is built substandard, and a lot of cases they close source an open source project because they don't want to have to compete with other Chinese companies. So it's unfortunate, but I wanted to point out the highlights. I wanted to share the information about the counterfeit CSDs as I'm starting to see them quite a bit. I'm also seeing one other piece of information I want to share with you guys. I'm also seeing, especially primarily on the hydro board. So if you buy a hydro board from eBay or from somebody and you want to try and run it on air, on conventional air cooling, they have changed the chips, primarily this chip right here, and have taken away your ability to control the speed of the ASIC fan, of the primary heatsink fan. And one of the big benefits we got recently from one of the big firmware updates for the NerdXs was the ability to control the ASIC fan and the VREG fan, okay, or secondary fan, independent of each other. That's something we couldn't do in the past. So I'm getting a lot of these boards in where the customers are asking me, and I've fixed a few of them. I've done a modification or replaced the chip with the correct chip to allow the customers to get their RPM control back. I find it extremely interesting that this is what it's coming to. So, buyer beware. If you're going to buy a hydro board, especially the ones that got the big gold sticker on it that says genuine, good luck. Good luck. We see a lot of that. I get a lot of those ones in, unfortunately. And guys, I'm only talking about the Rev 6.1 here. This gets far worse when we start talking about the Octax. because you want to talk about cutting corners and density of board and why that matters. There's a reason that we don't do ASIC chips on multi-chip miners anymore. I won't even consider doing them unless it's one of the original Rev 6s from Solo Satoshi. I'll consider doing those still. You know, because of the quality of the materials that are being used, the density of the boards. You know, changing ASIC chips out is tough enough as it is, but when you have a board that is so thin that as you heat it up, flexes so much that you start losing other chips in the chain, it's not worth my time. It's not worth your money or my time. So we don't do them anymore. I mean, I would spend 6 to 7 hours just trying to get some of these ones that were really thin. I have one manufacturer that we get in regularly from customers. Every single one I've had, it has had cracked ASIC chips on the board, and it's completely to do with the thickness of the board itself. AliExpress manufacturer, couldn't even tell you who it is. I just recognize those boards whenever I see them. First thing I check. And every single one of that style I've gotten in has had a cracked ASIC. And that's unfortunate because I got to tell the customers there's nothing I can do for you. There's nothing I can do for you. You know, I'm sure they paid $600, $800 for it, and now it's a brick. It's a boat anchor, and there's nothing I can do for them. So, again, extremely unfortunate, but you know, buyer beware. You gotta know what you're paying for. So, look, man, I don't want to take any more of your time. But I wanted to get that information out there. I wanted to share this primarily because I get a lot of questions. We get a lot of repairs in. I get a lot of questions. And I wanted to share that information with you guys just in one video, so that in the future when I get more questions, I can point people to this video and say, just watch this. It'll help explain. Again, you want to spend your money with AliExpress to save a couple of bucks, to save 20 bucks, 30 bucks, 50 bucks, 100 bucks. Just understand that you're going to have a lack of support. You're going to get a substandard product. In pretty much every single case I've seen from AliExpress. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. You know, then that's what you want to do. I typically take the stance of buy it once, cry once, versus, you know, I'll save a little bit of money and have to buy it over again. That decision's up to you. But if you need them fixed, we're here. ixtech.xyz. Go to the top, click on the repair link, fill out the form, pay your $25, send it in, read the form, send it in, and we'll be happy to take a look at it for you. Appreciate your time. See ya.